Okay. I've started the archiving, and the first few minutes here is a little advertisement here for our instructional technology program by the people who are wonderful enough to allow us to do these lunchtime learning programs. So I'd like to get started with that. And when I'm done, which it won't take long, I have this down to about 5 to 6 minutes, we will turn it over to our presenter today, who I have had the privilege of knowing for years, and I'm sure you're really going to enjoy this presentation. So let's get started. The Lunchtime Learning Series is brought to you by the Instructional Technology Management Graduate Program, which is a Master's of Science degree from Salle University in Philadelphia, PA. It is an online program, and it is all about e-learning, particularly focused towards corporate e-learning. We believe that the future of training and learning is online, on a screen, and on a device. So what this program is positioning you to do is to be a leader in the future of corporate e-learning. It is a Master's of Science degree, and there are a lot of opportunities that a degree like this can open up for you. Here are some examples of career titles that it might be appropriate to get this degree for. Chief Learning Officer, Instructional Architect, Human Capital Management, Training and Development, Human Resources. There are a wide range of businesses in the United States, including financial institutions, telecommunications, energy, technology, pharmaceutical, chemical. Companies hire for these positions under a lot of different titles. One of them is the instructional designer, sometimes it's instructional developer, e-learning specialist, corporate trainers, e-project managers, instructional technologists, senior learning officers, and on and on. One of the things that the internet has forced us to do is think bigger as the world is getting smaller. Globalization, multiculturalization, diversity have all made our world a much, much smaller place in the last few years. The American Society for Training and Development has included these jobs as one of the top 25 careers for the years ahead. LaSalle has a cross-disciplinary approach. It's a marriage between IT, the School of Business, the Department of Communications, and Information Technology Leadership. LaSalle is committed to help you. They have a wonderful staff. A ton of information is available on our website. I'll type that in the chat room when this is done. If you have any further questions, you can always call me. One of the main crux to this program is we walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk. It's not all theory and no practice. We try to use your background and we try to incorporate all of this to put you in a position that either within your company or if you are not in this field now and are looking for a job or you're in transition, to be able to position you to obtain that position that you want. We've been highly successful in this so far. We've placed learners with some of the top e-learning development companies in the country. One of them is the winner of 4 Brandon Hall Awards. Another one that we just placed somebody with is one of the fastest growing e-learning companies in the Philadelphia area. So we've had a lot of success so far. Once again, this program is about leadership. It's about giving you the credentials and the exposure necessary. Very briefly, if you don't know anything about the LaSallians have 18 universities in the United States and educate over 1 million people worldwide. The LaSallians are founded by the Christian Brothers, and they have a very, very wide reach. Their mission is on education and helping you learn. This particular program is online, so anywhere, anytime kind of learning. We do some face-to-face get-togethers if you're able to make it, and we are very happy that our learner constituency is growing. We now have people in many, many parts of the country. So if you're interested, you can go to www.lasalle.edu/ITM, and there's just a wealth of information and a lot of phone numbers for you to get in touch with. This is just a quick sample of the courses that you'll take. Instructional design, the adult learner. Noelle actually teaches our corporate e-learning course, which is a fantastic course. E-learning collaboration, project management. This is all out there on the website. I love this quote: education over the internet is going to be so big that it's going to make email look like a rounding error. That's by John Chambers of Cisco, 1999. All right, last but not least, here's my information. It's also out there on the website. My email is baggio, B-A-G-G-I-O, @lasalle.edu. With that, I am going to turn it over to Noelle. Noelle, if you want to pull up your slides, introduction here, and we'll get going. Noelle and I have known each other for years. We've had the privilege of working together on several different projects, proposals. We also founded, I don't know how many years ago it was now, it's been so many years, 3 or 4, the Philadelphia ASTD e-learning special interest group. And that's another one of the URLs we'll give you in the chat before we leave. There's just a ton of wonderful information out there, a lot of free resources, and a lot of just really good educational information done by some of the top professionals in the field. PowerPoints, PDFs, just a wealth of stuff that's available for you. And now I'd like to introduce Noelle Archambault. She's an e-learning designer and consultant. She is very, very experienced. She's had the privilege of working with many of the top companies in our area and really all over the United States. So Noelle, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bobby, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And what I'm going to start with is I want to take a quick poll just to find out about your experience designing content for virtual classes. So what I want you to do is grab your mouse and use the icons at the bottom of your screen to select your answer. you'll see that the chat and the X are down at the bottom of your screen. And then to get the thumbs up and the thumbs down, you have to click the little smiley face. And then you can select either the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So we have to be a little creative with our polling today. So I'll give everyone a second to go ahead and select your answer so I can see what your background is. Okay, so it looks like most of you have developed a couple of classes. We have a few that have never developed and a few that have developed several, and no one was brave enough to say that they've developed tons of classes, and they probably know more than me. So we're getting off to a good start. I think this is good. I think we have a wide range of people here today. So yeah, only Bobby wanted to, right? But she knew better. Okay, so what we're going to do today is basically by the end of the session, you're going to be able to keep your learners awake, engaged, and learning by using visuals that educate, don't decorate, and by adding relevant and meaningful interactivity to your virtual sessions so that your learners won't look like the girl here. So I love this picture, right? This is what everyone wants to be doing during our training session. So we're going to try to make sure that people don't do that. Okay, so the first topic we're going to talk about is how to use visuals that educate, don't decorate. And before we start this topic, I'd like to give you another pre-assessment. Let me go ahead and actually clear the poll real quick. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is basically answer this question, is the check or the X? And I'm not going to tell you what I think now, but hopefully it's going to become apparent throughout the session. Then what I'm going to do is ask the same question at the end to see if you've changed your mind. I think we've given everyone enough time. So it looks like we have about 25 saying no and about 5 saying yes. Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and clear it now. And then, like I said, I'm not going to tell you what I think now, but we're going to come back later. We're going to talk about this and see if any of you have changed your mind. Okay, so time for yet another poll, and then I promise we'll get down to business. But what I want to find out is when we talk about visual design in the virtual class, it really begins with your PowerPoint template, which is why it's critical to have a good template for your virtual class. Now, for the purposes here, don't worry about your organization's colors or logo or look and feel, but pretend that you're designing a virtual class and you have to choose one of these 4 templates. Which one would you choose? So again, use either the check, the X, or use the smiley face to get the thumbs up and the thumbs down for the bottom 2 templates. Give everyone a second. Okay, so we're pretty distributed here, which is good. So we have quite a few really saying each template, although the winner is clearly the 4th one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of go through each of the choices. And basically we'll start with choice 1, the gray template with the white text. It's really not the best choice, basically because, for one, it's harder to read light text on a dark background. In the past, when we were in dark rooms watching presentations, it was easier to read light text on dark backgrounds. However, learners watching a virtual class are typically in a light room watching a bright computer screen. And research shows that it's easier to read dark text on a light background. So think about popular web, Google and CNN that have a lot of text. They all have white backgrounds with dark text. So our PowerPoint slides should look the same. The other reason that dark backgrounds aren't as good in the virtual classroom is because it's harder to annotate or to draw on them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about annotations in a minute. Okay, so now for basically the next 2 choices, I'll call them kind of choices 2 and 3. these have a white background with dark text, right, which I said is good, but they're not the best choices because these templates have either graphics or backgrounds that consume a lot of real estate. So if you look over here, we have the woman taking up a lot of space, and then you have kind of these colored borders taking up a lot of space on the bottom one. And so the problem with the first one is that if you add graphics to this slide, then this woman, so if I put a graphic, over here, then this graphic might compete with the woman that's already on the slide. And so people are going to be staring at this nice, attractive woman over here on the left instead of focusing on your graphic on the right. In the bottom template, you can see I circled kind of that big border on the top and the big border on the left. So again, it's just taking up a lot of real estate, so it's just giving you less room here for your content. Now, if you were to basically make these bars a little bit shorter, then maybe have a little skinny bar, I think that one would have worked really well. Okay, so the key is to remember that you don't want to clutter your slides with unnecessary graphics that take up valuable space. You want to have as much room as possible for your content. After all, that's why people are there to learn about your content, right? Okay, so basically by now I think you've figured out that template 4 is the best choice, and that's what the majority of everyone answered was template 4. Again, it might look a little bit, more boring than the other slides, but as you can see, it has a light background with dark text, and it has a lot of room for your content. So congratulations to those of you who picked this template. Good job. Okay, so once you select a template and you begin developing your slides, the first thing you typically enter is the slide's title. So up here at the top, the title. Okay, in the virtual classroom, it's very, very important that you select a good title and also that you enter it correctly into PowerPoint. Because when you upload your slides into the virtual classroom, it takes the title that's in this Click to Add Title field, and it creates a menu that the instructor can use to jump from slide. This is from a different software program, but basically all virtual classroom tools do the same thing, where they have a little menu. So I have over here in WIMBA, I have a little menu that tells me what the titles of my slides are, so I can see, what's coming up, or if I want to jump from slide to slide, it's easy for me to do that. So the key is to make sure you use the Click to Add Title field. I've seen a lot of PowerPoints where it looks like there's a title at the top, so you see the title at the top, but instead of using the Click to Add Title field, the person basically just came in and just drew it, just inserted a text box and just typed their text into the text box. And it looks fine on the slide, right? So you see the title up there, but when you upload it into the virtual classroom, the software doesn't know that this is the title, and so basically it's just going to give the slide title like slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, and that's going to make it really hard for the instructor to know which slide is which. A good way to check this, in case you don't know, hey, do my slides have the Click to Add, are they using the Click to Add Title field or not, is if you switch over to the outline view. So, in PowerPoint, you have kind of those two tabs at the top. You have the Slides tab, and then you have that little Outline tab. And usually we develop on the Slides tab, right, where you have the little thumbnails of the slides. But if you switch over to the Outline tab, you should see your title at the top, and then you should see the bullets for your slide underneath them. So the key is you want to make sure you see that title. If you don't see that title, then it probably means that you're not using the Click to Add Title field. Okay, so that's a little bit about titles. And now we're going to talk about the bullets, right? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your title on the screen. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're probably going to start adding your content, which is typically bullets. When you add your bullets to your slide, you want to try to use the 6x6 rule. It's in 6 words per bullet. Now, it doesn't mean you can never have 7 or 8 bullets on a slide or 7 or 8 words in a bullet, but I find that if I use this as a guideline, it helps me keep down the amount of text on the screen, which brings me to my next bullet. That bullet should be highlights, not content, and that the instructor should fill in the content. If all the content's on the slide, why is the instructor there, right? Why would I be here if I just put a bunch of text up on the slide? I'd just, basically give you the slides and let you read them yourself. So real quick, the key is that you just want to have slides and you just want to have kind of key points in your bullets, and then the instructor is going to fill in the content for you. Okay. Then basically the last section is that less is more. So always remember, less is more and weed out the fluff. Virtual classes a lot of times are typically shorter than traditional classes that we're used to. So if you're converting from an instructor-led class to a virtual class, you're probably going to need to cut things out. So when you're cutting things out, make sure you're cutting out non-essential things only, and really sticking to the main points. Okay, so we talked about templates, we talked about slide titles, we talked about bullets. So the next thing I want to talk about is graphics. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so if I'm telling you you can only put 36 words on a slide, right? 6 bullets, 6 words per bullet, 36 words, then maybe you can add a picture to help the learner remember the content. So, for instance, many of the pictures here are probably bringing back memories for you. But what I really want to ask you here is, when's the last time you guys saw these pictures? If you think about it, yeah, I know, I love this cell phone. This just cracks me up. Although someone did tell me they saw someone running these leg warmers the other day, which is really scary. And yes, 79-cent gas. I really wish that was around here today. So more than likely, unless you saw someone wearing these the other day, they might be making a comeback. Most of these other things you probably haven't seen since the 80s or the 90s, right? So basically, the 80s and the 90s are the last time that you should have used these things. And yes, I'm talking about clip art, even the beloved screen beans that everyone likes. Unfortunately, clip art still in use today, but together with all of your help, so I'm hoping you guys can all help me out, we can rid the world of clip art one screen bean at a time. All right. Yes. Okay, and as an example, if we look here, what I've done is I've basically replaced some of the clip art with some photos. So instead of the clip art of the woman here, I have this nice photo of this lady looking at the computer. Instead of the clip art of the guy on the phone, right, we have a real picture of the guy on the phone. And instead of this lovely screen bean here, we have this nice gentleman thinking. So, look at the clip art, look at the photos, and see how much more professional, interesting, and engaging the photos look versus the clip art. Okay, so now just because photos are better than clip art doesn't mean that you should randomly put them on every slide. A lot of research has been done about graphics and learning, most notably Richard Mayer. Richard Mayer found that relevant graphics can improve learning. So if you have a graphic that can aid in the learning process, you should definitely go ahead and use it. However, thankfully, the key thing about Mayer's research is he found that irrelevant graphics can actually result in poorer learning because they overload learners' cognitive capacity. So really the key is to not use decorative photos. They might make your slides look nicer, but if everyone's staring at a photo of an attractive man or woman instead of paying attention to your content and listening to the instructor, then you're really defeating the whole purpose of the training. So one of my mantras in the title of this session that you probably remember is educate, don't decorate. So the key here is if you're going to add a graphic, make sure that you're educating with it and you're not just putting it up for decoration purposes. And I have this little photo of the stocking since the holidays are coming up, right? So decorating is nice for your house, but it's not good for your training classes. The other thing, too, is remember that it's okay. It's okay if you have slides without graphics. Okay, so if we don't have graphics on the slide, then what are we going to put on the slide? If you have a lot of white space, again, and we talked earlier about this too, about leaving lots of white space, right, for your content, and about using slides with white background so it's easier to annotate. Well, if you leave this white space, it's going to encourage your instructors who are teaching the class to annotate or to draw on the slides, right, kind of as I've been doing. I've been doing a little bit of drawing on the slides. And kind of my inspiration for drawing on the slides is the man on the screen. So what I want to do, this is just for fun, if you know who this man is, go ahead and type his name into the chat, although don't press enter right away. We'll give everyone, Stephanie actually jumped the gun there. That's okay. That's okay. But I wanted to see maybe someone else. But if you want, you can go ahead and press enter just so you know. We all know. Everybody knows this is John Madden, right? Yeah, there we go. So just for fun, he's one of my favorite football announcers, John Madden. And, any of you who have watched football, whether it's John Madden or a lot of the other announcers do it too, Santa Claus, very funny, Matt. We could put a little hat on him, right, and make him Santa Claus. But kind of why he inspires me is if you watch football, John Madden, he's always drawing like all those X's and the O's on the screen, right? And so that way you can kind of see the players and see what players are doing what. And it really draws your attention to the game. It helps keep you engaged and even helps you learn a little bit about football and the plays that are made. So whenever you're designing your content, again, remember to leave that white space so that your instructor can be John Madden. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the first topic, which is using the visuals that educate and don't decorate. And so what I want to do now, let's see, the poll is cleared, so we're good. So what I want to find out now is we had you guys kind of split a little bit at the beginning. Some of you said true, some said false to this question. So go ahead and answer it again. Use the icons at the bottom and use either the check or the X. So if I only have one yes, and I have mostly no's. So I'm hoping now that by the end, we went up to 2 yeses. So I'm hoping now that you're realizing that it's okay to have a slide sound graphic. Again, especially in the virtual classroom, again, remember if you're putting a photo on the slide, make sure that it's really educating the learner, because if it's decorating, it's really just detracting from the learning process. And again, you want to leave the instructor room to annotate. So all this white space over here, instead of putting a decorative photo, gives the learner or the instructor, time to annotate on the slides. Okay, so hopefully everyone's given in. Harriet's given in. Okay, I know it's hard, right? Because you have this slide, it looks really blank, but again, white space is good. Remember, white space is your friend, and it gives you lots of room to draw. It gives you a chance to really focus on the content and focus on what the instructor's saying. Okay, so trying to clear the poll real quick. There we go. Okay, so now this brings us to our second topic, A, which is the second way to keep learners awake, engaged, and learning, and that's by adding relevant and meaningful interactivity. Okay, so just like last time, I want to start out by doing kind of a quick little pre-assessment poll. And again, I'm not going to tell you what I think now. Oops. Sorry about that. Do a quick pre-assessment poll. And again, I'm not going to tell you what I think now. But again, we'll kind of do the same thing, or I'll have you answer now, and then by the end of the session, we'll see if you change your mind. So we're going to answer. So again, use the check at the bottom or the X. Okay, and we're a little split. I'm at about 21 no's and about 11 yeses. So pretty good. About 2/3 no and about 1/3 at yeses. Okay. So again, what we'll do is we'll kind of discuss this and we'll visit this question at the end and see if you guys have changed your minds. So I'll go ahead and clear the poll real quick. Okay. So first what I want to do is just talk about some general guidelines for interactivity. Really the hardest thing about designing content for the virtual classroom is creating relevant and meaningful interactivity. It's true that frequent interactions get to keep participants engaged. However, interaction does not always equal learning, and that's really the key. Just because people are typing things or clicking things doesn't necessarily mean that they're learning the content. So the key is when you create practice activities, you want to make sure that they're relevant and meaningful. And you can do this by figuring out what motivates your learners. And you also want to make them apply knowledge, not just recall what you've said. It's easy for people to repeat information, but the key is really making sure they've learned the information and they can apply it to their jobs. Then the last thing is make sure that you're distributing the practice activities throughout the session and don't just put them at the end. So you want to make sure you're constantly kind of checking and making sure that your learners are really getting it. So don't just, throw everything all at the end. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the specific types of interactivity that you can use in the virtual classroom. First one we'll talk about is polls. Polls are used a lot in the virtual classroom. We've done a lot of polls today. They're great to use at the beginning to learn about participants' backgrounds, right? So I asked you guys, what your experience was with designing virtual classes, right? So great to use at the beginning. They're also good to use throughout the sessions, like I said, to kind of quiz participants and make sure that they're getting it. A couple of tips for using polls are to remember that polls can be visual ones, like the one I used earlier with the 4 different PowerPoint templates. You're not limited to just text-based polls. So where I had the 4 pictures of the 4 different templates, and I asked you guys to, select which one you would use. So, don't just think you have to have kind of text-based answers. You can put pictures up there and have people select a picture. Another great way is to ask the same polling question at the beginning and the end to see how participants' answers change after they learn the content. So just like I did with the visual one, right, where I asked the poll at the beginning and then at the end, and I'm doing kind of the same thing in this section. So polls are really a great way to add interactivity to your virtual classes. Okay, another way is chat. Chat's highly used in the virtual classroom. It's easy to use. A lot of people have used either IM or text messaging, right? So chat's a concept most people are familiar with. Chat's great if you want to ask short, open-ended questions. You can also use it to brainstorm ideas. And then let's see, some tips for using the chat are if you're quizzing participants or trying to get unbiased responses, tell them to type in their answer but wait to hit enter, like I did with the John Madden question, only I think I was talking too slow and we had Stephanie who kind of jumped the gun a little bit. That happened. So you got to do a better job of preparing your learners, which I didn't really do when I asked that question. So that's always kind of fun is to add quiz questions, and a lot of times I'll do this with my students where I have them, type in an answer and, tell them to wait to hit enter, and then if they all hit enter at once, then I know they're not just, cheating off of what the previous person said. The next you want to think about, too, is private chat. Right now we're mostly using the public chat. And typically people only use the private chat, like if you have a private question for the instructor that you don't want the class to see. But when you're designing classes, please remember that you can pair up learners and you can give them a topic to discuss in private chat. So again, I could kind of pair you together and tell you, okay, go have a private chat with this person and, talk about a topic. And then you can either have people summarize it back in the main chat room when they come back, or maybe we could even do an audio response when they come back. Again, if you have a smaller class today with a larger group, it's a lot harder to add some of this interactivity. Okay. Next slide is annotating by participants. So we've talked about annotating by the instructor, right? So we've said your instructor should be John Madden. However, don't forget that in most virtual classroom tools, that the instructor can give participants permission to draw on the slides too. So again, with all the people in today, it would be a little bit crazy if I let all of you do that. But in a small class of like 15 people or less, it can work really well. You can have participants mark up graphics, you can have them draw diagrams, and you can also use annotating to let them answer sensitive questions. So you probably have noticed when we do the polling questions that down at the bottom, next to your name, it shows what you answered, or when you type in something into the chat, it puts your name before you type it in. So everybody knows kind of what everybody else is either answering or typing. But kind of the cool thing with the annotations is when I do them or when the participants do them, you can't tell, who drew what. And so a lot of times it's nice if you have a question and you can even have answers down here, like your A, B, C, Ds, and then you can just have the participants kind of, check off the answers. And they're putting a check there, and we have no idea, who answered what. So if you're doing kind of, some sensitive training or something where people wouldn't necessarily want to have their responses known, then that's kind of a good way to do, anonymous quizzing or polling. Okay. Then a couple of tips for incorporating annotations by participants are, and again, it depends on how many people you have, but what can go crazy is if you start having people, drawing on top of each other, right? And so one thing you can do is you can have a grid, draw a little grid on your slide, and you can put little numbers in the grid. And then what you can do is you can number off your participants, and you can tell your participants, okay, Matt, I want you to draw in square number 1, and John, I want you to draw in square number 2, and so forth, and number them off. So that way, if they're typing or writing the comment in there. They're not all drawing on top of each other. Okay. Next thing we can use for kind of adding interactivity in the class is the audio. So again, so far, it's mostly me talking. But again, if you have a smaller class, then it's a lot easier to let your participants, give verbal responses instead of just doing, polling and chat and things like that. So what's good about audio is if the participants don't already know each other, so like in our group today, it's great if you can have them each verbally introduce themselves at the beginning of the session. This is going to increase social presence and help the participants feel more like they're part of a community, much like a group of students, in a traditional classroom when they're sitting next to each other and getting to know each other. It's harder, obviously, to form this sense of community in the virtual classroom, but I think that by hearing each other's voices, it's going to help. Audio is also good, too, for letting participants answer open-ended questions that would take too long to type into the chat, right? So you don't want people typing, paragraphs and paragraphs into the chat. So sometimes it's nice just to let people talk, or if they have a question, sometimes it's nice just to let them ask a question by audio versus, making them type everything into the chat. And then if you build verbal participant activities into your class design, the other thing it does is it forces people to pay attention, especially if they don't know, if or when they're going to be called up. And so one of my first tips is to create questions that require the instructor to call on participants randomly. And in my experience, you only have to do this once or maybe twice towards the beginning of the session, and the participants are going to hang on to your every word for fear that they're going to be called on any moment to answer a question. So all I have to do is once at the beginning say, hey, Susan, what did you think about that? And, the minute I put one person on the spot, everyone else now is fair game, right, to be put on the spot. So it's just going to kind of make them pay a little more attention and hopefully not be checking their emails. Let's see, a couple other tips for using audio are what I'll do a lot too is, again, you can put up a polling question and then like when I did the templates at the beginning, I could put that up and then I could have called on someone and said, okay, hey John, can you tell me why you selected template 1? Why did you think that was the best? And then let them kind of explain their answers. So that's kind of another good way to use audio. And then I think audio too is good to have people share stories and experiences. Again, kind of building that sense of community and learning from others in the virtual classroom is really what people like and really what's going to help them learn. Yes, that's the question, exactly. Okay. So the next thing then we're going to talk about is application sharing by participants. If you're doing any kind of software training, application sharing is used a lot in the virtual classroom. Application sharing is good. I could share my screen. I could show you, maybe how to build a template in PowerPoint or something. But the problem, I think, with application sharing in most of the classes I've seen is that it's usually only used by the instructor, right? Usually it's more of a demo mode where the instructor gets up, the instructor's demoing, this is how you do this is how you do that. But if you're really trying to teach them how to use a software application, the learners really need to, they need to practice it. They need to click things and type things to really learn how to use the software. And so instead of having learners just sit back and passively watch, what you can do, and again, this depends on your virtual classroom tool, but most of them work where you can share the application. Either I could share the application on my computer and the participants could actually control it, or the participants could actually, if they have the application, right, if they have the software, they can share it on their computers and control it. So one thing that's kind of fun that I've done before is a lot of times I'll share an application and I'll pass the floor to, one person and let them do a few steps. And then I'll pass the floor to a couple more people and let them do a few more steps. So, that way they're taking turns. We're going around the room and, instead of me demoing it, I'm telling them what to do and what to click. So I'm still guiding them through it. I'm still teaching them. But what's nice is they're actually, they're kind of running the show and doing all the clicking. So again, with your application sharing, kind of the tip is to, instead of doing the demoing, to actually guide the participants through it. Okay. Something else we can use to add interactivity is, and this is called different things in different tools, but a lot of tools will call it like a web safari or a web tour. And that's basically where I can push a website to you. So instead of me, sharing my screen with you, I'm actually pushing a website to you. So each of you has that website open on your screen, and you guys can kind of click and explore and do whatever you want. So each person can kind of, click different things, explore different things. So that's what Web Safari is. And it's to let participants explore a website. So you may be doing maybe some, we've done this like with sales training before, and we'll have the salespeople go out to the website and actually, look at the products that are available and kind of do some research, and then, come back to the group and summarize it up. So you can have them explore things. You can have them search for information. Another fun thing is you can do a scavenger hunt where, they're collecting treasures, right? So like collecting little things. So I'm a really bad drawer today. Sorry about that. That's supposed to be a trunk. We'll just erase that. Okay. And so what you can do is, have them do kind of like a little scavenger hunt and have them come back. Another thing, too, is if they're off kind of doing stuff on their own, give them a set time, and then, and then have them come back. Or another thing I'll do, too, is I'll say, go off and explore it, take about 5 minutes, and then when you're done, come back and raise your hand. And so then that way I can kind of look through the participant list, and when I see pretty much all the hands up, then I can say, okay, we're going to kind of resume back in the main classroom. Another thing, too, is you always want to make sure this is a good time, too, where you want to, call on people or have people maybe summarize things in the chat, because you want to make sure that they're off at that website, right, that they weren't off, checking their email or anytime you do some of this kind of web safari, exploratory thing, make sure that you have participants share what they learned when they come back. Okay. See, 2 more things about interactivity. So many things you can do in the virtual classroom to add interactivity. Probably one of the best ones, again, when you have smaller, a smaller group of participants to begin with, is to do breakout groups. Research shows that people learn in groups than they do by themselves. So, for regular classes, that's why we do a lot of little breakout groups. However, we tend to forget that breakout groups can be used in the virtual classroom, too. You can use breakout groups to allow participants to discuss an issue. They can do role-play activities, or they could even debate a case study. So lots of things you can do by breaking them up. Some tips for using breakout groups, because this is probably one of the harder things to do. It can get a little confusing. So you want to make sure you're really specific in your instructions about what you want them to do when they go to their groups. You also want to limit it to 3, 4, or I would say even maybe 5 people at the max, although that's even a little high. You want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate, right? So, probably 3 or 4 people is probably good. The other thing, too, is you want to make sure you designate a leader, right? Someone who's in charge, who's kind of running the show, and then that leader can summarize the group's work back in the main room. Okay. So the last interactivity we're going to talk about is games. And games are a fun and interactive way to test the learner's knowledge and help them transfer what they learned back to their jobs. The key with games is that they must be related to the content. Don't ask them trivial questions just for fun. Again, it's like decorative visuals, right? Games that aren't related to the content. It's all it's going to do is overload the learner. So again, make sure that your games are related to the content. The other thing, too, is if you create a game, try not to just do basic, recall, where they're just, regurgitating what you've told them throughout the session. Try to write, higher level questions that make them really apply what they learned, right? So like Bloom's taxonomy. If any of you are familiar with that, you want to write the questions, that are at these kind of higher levels. And you're really making them apply what they learned. And this is true, really, too, not just for games, but even for practice activities throughout the session. Okay. So this brings me to the end of the adding interactivity section. And so just like last time, I want to do a little post-assessment to see if you guys have changed your mind about asking a question every 1 to 5 minutes. If you ask a question every 1 to 5 minutes, they're paying attention and learning the content. So you can be excited to answer. Okay, and again, we only have like one yes, mostly no's. Give me a second. Okay, so again, so great. The answer is false. Again, they might be paying attention, right? But paying attention is different from learning the content. So again, you know, you don't just want to ask them a question. You want to make sure you're really engaging them. You're asking them something where they have to think, and you're not just, you know, having them kind of regurgitate things that you've already told them. All right, very good. So we'll clear this out. Which brings me to my so basically we went through kind of two topics today. And so you should now be able to keep your learners awake, engaged, and learning by using visuals that educate, don't decorate, and also by adding relevant and meaningful interactivity to your virtual lesson so that the girl on the couch at the beginning will now look like this girl here, right? This is what we want everyone to look like, right? Engaged, paying attention, and learning is the key. Okay, so that's going to bring me to my Q&A session, and I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat, but it's really hard to talk and read the chat. So luckily I've had Bobby and John kind of helping out and watching the chat. So John or Bobby, were there any questions that came in that I didn't address yet?
Hi, Noelle. Yeah.
John's been
Sorry, didn't mean to step on you, Bobby. There.
Go, John.
One of the questions or themes coming up was particularly on how to really address this when you're dealing with a group of learners dialed in as one instead of everybody individually connecting. You know, how do you engage, for example, the group of 10 sitting around the conference table? And the next step on that would be, you know, how do you really look at engaging international multilingual audiences, perhaps in different time zones? So that's two for the table at the moment.
Okay. So the first one, and I mean, I don't think this happens too much anymore, but I mean, I can definitely see it happening where you're doing a presentation and you have people, you know, sitting around a conference room and there's only one computer. So you kind of have, you know, one person, you know, sharing the computer. So you can't have, you know, all of you, you know, click the check or click the X, right? Because there's only one person, you know, let's say in a room of 10. So I think what you can do there is you can have them, you know, really work together and maybe, you know, maybe come up with a consensus, you know, as far as, or even, you know, instead of having each person, you know, click the check or the X, you know, make sure you have, you know, you kind of have a group leader, right, there with the computer leading things. And then you can either have them, you know, take a consensus. So they could take a consensus and be like, okay, 7 out of 10 of us, you know, say green check. So we'll click the green check. Or you could have them type into the chat, hey, you know, 7 said yes and 3 said no. But I think kind of getting that group to work together and even do, you know, you could do breakout groups, right? I mean, you're right there, so it's a lot easier for people to talk to each other. So, you know, it's fine if you have people, you know, step away from the computer for a minute and, you know, get in little groups, you know, little groups of 3 or 4 and discuss things with each other. So let's see. So that's the first question. And then I think, John, the second question you were talking about international, global audiences, different time zones. I actually deal with it pretty much on a day-to-day basis. Right now I'm doing some work for SAP. I'm working for their global marketing operations. And I'm part of the global team, but then we have 4 regions, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We have APJ, Asia, Pacific, Japan, North America, Latin America. So we have the 4 different regions. And so what we typically have to do is, luckily, most of the people we train do speak English. So, I mean, you know, you have to speak slower and things like that. But typically, what's nice is we can just have an English speaker do multiple sessions. So we'll usually hold sessions, like we'll do like a 9 or 10 o'clock session in the morning, because that can usually get North America, Latin America, and then most of the people in EMEA are about 6 hours ahead. So it's late in the afternoon for them. The hardest people are the people in Asia and Japan. We usually have to do, they're about 12 hours ahead, so usually we're doing sessions at 9, which is like 9 a.m. for them. So we usually do have to do 2 sessions to get the 4 regions, but it can be done. We've also found, too, that, like I said, even though most of our people know, they know English, and they can read okay, so we might not necessarily translate the slides, so we'll keep the slides in English, but we found that it's really helpful. It's been working really well actually in Latin America for us to have a Spanish-speaking person deliver the training. So you have someone delivering it and speaking Spanish, but then the slides are just in English, which makes it, obviously a little easier on us for development-wise. So hopefully that answers. Yeah, and exactly. Dana says with people talking too fast. I've gotten yelled at for that already. When I first started out, they're like, "Could you speak slower?" So I have to just speak fast, and so I've learned now with the people who English isn't their first language to definitely slow down and speak slower, and you just kind of have to take a slower pace, but they do really well. So hopefully that answers that question. And were there any others that I've missed so far? Or if anyone else has a question, feel free to just type it right into the chat. Oh, yeah. Okay, so John said that's all he had. And, yeah, Bobby brought up a great point, too, about, all our little IMs of, talk to you later and be right back and things like that. They might not recognize them. So, yeah, we definitely have to spell them out. SAP is notorious for acronyms, so we just have to make sure that we spell everything out. Send out the presentation. Yeah, I know Bobby is archiving this session, and I'll talk to her if we can just put the slides up as well. We can probably do that somewhere on the ITM site. Yeah, the 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah,
my favorite.
Yeah. We'll PDF
funny.
and we'll put them out there when we archive and then we'll put it out on the site.
Okay, cool. So I was just going to tell you my favorite. I call them sapronyms. It's like acronym, but for SAP. Is we have a tool called the Digital Asset Manager, and people do actually call it the DAM tool. So we say things like, when's the DAM training for the DAM tool going to be done? So the abbreviations are funny, but I'm just kind of killing some time and see if anybody else has any other questions. Okay, sounds like everybody enjoyed it. I know if they've heard DAM, it reminds me of Vegas Vacation, if anyone's seen Vegas Vacation. All right,
folks, if there are no other questions, we so appreciate you, Noelle. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Great tips here this morning on how to make your virtual classroom more interesting, more interactive, more engaging, things that we are always looking for. This will be archived. It's being archived now. We will make it available to you. There will be an email sent out. Noelle, do you want to talk to them a little bit about the poll, the evaluation?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and actually push that out right now. In case you guys have a couple of minutes, since we ended a couple of minutes early, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push out a little survey just about today's session. So it's a survey done in SurveyMonkey. So if you have time, this thing is only, 6 questions. So again, we at LaSalle, we give these programs every month, and so we want to make sure that, we're meeting your needs, that you guys are enjoying these, to find out, what else you guys want to learn about in the future. So if you have a couple minutes, if you could just take a couple minutes and fill out the poll. Also, when Bobby archives the session, she's going to send you out an email. The email has a link to the archive, a link to the slides, and also a link to the survey as well. So if you don't have time to do it now, please do it when you get the email from Bobby. We'd really appreciate it. References. There we go. These are all great books. All great books that I have. So E-Learning by Design with Horton. We use that in my class right now, the ITM 625 class, E-Learning in the Corporate Environment. Jen Hoffman wrote a great book. She has a couple of great books on synchronous training And then Ruth Clark, who most of you have probably heard of, and Ann Quinn co-wrote a really good book on the new virtual classroom. The last one is if you're into research and studies. I talked about the research done by Richard Mayer about the graphics that educate versus the decorative graphics that distract. That's a really good book if you're into research, the book by Mayer.
All righty, folks. Thank you so much for coming. We will be getting the email out to you. Noelle, you're going to push the survey out?
I already did. Hopefully, you know what I'll do? I'll put it, let me put it in the chat, too. In case it didn't work. There we go. There's the link in the chat. So you guys, if the survey window should have opened for you automatically, but I forget with pop-up blockers and stuff, sometimes it doesn't come up because it does open in a new window. So if the survey didn't open for you, you can just click that link in the chat. And like I said, Bobby will also be pushing that, pushing it out to you when she sends the follow-up email with the archive link in the slides.
And thanks everybody for coming. Hopefully we will see you in December. In December we have Nathan Eckel and 5 easy ways to educate your subject matter experts on ID. That will wind us down for 2009. In 2010 we have Dave Goodman from Soft Assist. We've got Jackie Beck doing reusable learning objects coming up. We've got Gus Prestera. So we've got a good lineup coming up in 2010. The 2010 lunchtime learning events will start in February, but you'll be getting a postcard and emails on that. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a wonderful day.